Good morning. The hour of 9:30 has arrived. Mr. Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Supervisors Martinez,
Here.
Cox-Jones,
Excused.
Belinsky,
Here.
Ekblad.
Here.
Mr. Chairman,
Here.
there are 4 members present, 2 appearing virtually. We have a quorum.
We're going to go a little out of order today. We're going to take item 2 first.
Item 2, from the Director, Department of Transportation, and the President and Chief Executive Officer, Milwaukee County Transit System, providing an informational report regarding the transit funding shortfall. This file is also considered by the Committee on Finance and is informational only unless otherwise directed by the committee.
Good morning. Please introduce yourselves.
Good morning. Joe Lamers, Director of the Milwaukee County Department of Transportation.
Good morning. Sandy Kellner, the Chief Administrative Officer for MCTS. So the report you have in front of you is related to the 2025 transit funding shortfall. So we're going to speak a little bit about an update on the end of the year, as well as a summary of the new initiatives that we're taking in 2026. As you will recall that in December of 2025, the County Board approved the transfer of the federal COVID relief funds in the amount of $9.1 million to cover the projected shortfall. And as a result, the year-end deficit was no longer anticipated. The projected shortfall was a result of being over budget in a combination of areas in 2025. However, the primary areas in which we had a deficit included nearly $5 million in salary and fringe. That was healthcare costs that we had under budgeted for, as well as a significant amount of overtime and spread premiums. Another primary driver was the low productivity of our paratransit contractor, and that was responsible for $2.6 million of the shortfall. There were a few other areas that contributed to the shortfall beyond that, and as the report indicates, one of which was the lower than anticipated fare revenue. So we took a lot of corrective actions in 2025, including reducing the overtime across the organization, except for situations where there were emergencies. As you recall, in the fall pick, we reduced some of the bus service hours, and as far as our paratransit vendor, Transdev, we continued, and we still continue to work collaboratively with them to reduce some of those unplanned expenditures. We also, for example, had some temporary suspensions of new employees, recruitments, and filling of vacancies. We also want to give you a little bit of an update on some of the depreciation issues. I'm going to let Joe take that one before I give you the 2026 initiative update.
Thank you. So I won't go into too much detail on this. We have a separate file on it, but essentially we had 2 buses that were relatively new that were destroyed 2 to 3 years ago in reckless driving accidents. It was a pretty uncommon experience for that to happen with 2 buses that were so new. And normally we pay depreciation on buses over 12 years, but in this case, since the buses lost their value and based on accounting rules, the comptroller's office indicated need to be paid for all the rest of the depreciation all at once. So there was a local share cost to the county that wasn't planned for there, which we have a request to utilize contingency funding to cover, and that will come up in a separate item as well.
So thanks, Joe. And so looking ahead in 2026, we have been actively working on some new strategies. Some examples of what we're doing. We've kind of upped our monitoring of our financial statements to ensure that we're staying on budget. We've got a lot of initiatives as they relate to safety and the safety of our passengers and our bus operators. That includes, one example, a pilot program with the Milwaukee County Sheriff's Office and having their presence undercover on buses available to target some of the higher crime areas. And that project has just started, brand new. Also, we are in the process of evaluating prototypes for enhanced driver safety barriers. As you know, we have the barriers, the bus shields on our buses, but there are some models and versions out there that offer even greater protection for our bus operators. So we're working with that on a prototype there. We're also taking active steps to address the fare evasion that we reported last year. So we've got a new policy for our bus operators that they take the approach of being fare informers. They're not enforcers, but they are fare informers. That is underway, as well as displaying fare is required on the destination sign. You've probably seen it coming down the road. So really elevating our culture of this is the expectation that our passengers, hey, you got some skin in the game here too. We need you to pay your fare. So a couple other examples of our initiatives in 26. We are preparing for the 2027 budget. And right now, it's going to be significant because we are forecasting a deficit of approximately $17 to $20 million based on the known funding levels that will be available to us in 2027. The COVID relief is essentially expired. And as part of that, we have an RFP on the street right now to engage with an outside consultant on a bus network redesign. And so really what that is getting experts brought to Milwaukee to work with us and our community, all of our stakeholders, our passengers, the board, and the union, all of our stakeholders to say what does a system look like that we can actually afford. So that is something that we're in the process right now. Beyond that, last but not least, we are partnering, and I'll let Joe give a little bit more detail on this initiative, but partnering with MCDOT and the Office of Government Affairs on some new state and federal funding efforts.
Absolutely. So we are working with government affairs on our funding efforts regarding state and federal. So I just want to provide some information about what's happened and what to expect going forward. One, regarding federal funding, we had some positive news recently that the federal 26 appropriations for transit at the federal level are remaining approximately level with where they were before. We had some major concerns. There were discussions about transit funding being fully eliminated, guaranteed transit funding. But even if it wasn't to be that extreme, we also had some concerns that federal transit funding was going to be reduced because previous allocations were propped up by Infrastructure Act funds, and there was a concern that the funding would go back to pre-Infrastructure Act levels. And as of now, for 2026, our federal funding is expected to remain approximately level. So that's some positive news. We did also secure $1 million for MCTS to purchase bus through the earmark process. We are working with state partners on funding campaign-related efforts. So going into next biennial budget, the state's transportation funding campaign is being kicked off, and that's really a campaign that's focused on roads and highway improvements, and that's very important. It's something we want to be part of, but we're also trying to make a case for transit to be included in that discussion as well. We're also just in the process of gathering data to be able to talk about the benefits of public transit, and I believe you could expect to see in one of the upcoming cycles, potentially in May, a report on the benefits of public transit, and specifically as it relates to transit in Milwaukee County. We're also working on financial reports to the board in addition to this one that's shared on a regular basis. We want to just be very transparent about all of our funding sources, federal, state, local, where they've been trending and why we're seeing such a large gap and the level of challenge that transit is currently facing from a funding perspective. And those are some of the activities that are being worked on right now, and you could expect to see some more reports on that in the upcoming cycle. So I think that's what I had to share there.
Thanks, Joe.
Committee members? No questions? I see Supervisor Vincent is with us.
Yes, and thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, committee members, and thank you, Director Lamers and Kellner, for this report today. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So I have some things, I have a question, but I also have a statement I want to make because several of us, as you know, we are going to be having interruptions in service starting on March 8th. And I haven't had the full opportunity to reach out to all the supervisors, but I want to share some of my thoughts regarding the direction MCTS is going. So if you wouldn't mind giving me a moment to share some of this. And then I have a question for Director Lamers and Kellner. So as many of you know, service has been recently cut to communities in our county or will be as of March 8th, including Greendale in my district, which we're going to be losing service, the only service we have coming to our community. Several of your districts are also being faced with the loss of service, and I'm deeply concerned that our county residents are continuing to pay for Milwaukee County Transit System services while no longer receiving them. Over the past several weeks, I have heard from many of my constituents who rely on these routes every day. Residents have shared that the discontinuation of service will make it extremely difficult, if not impossible, for them to get to work, attend medical appointments, reach school, and access other essential services. While I appreciate the report that has been provided today, it does not address the reality that many county residents have already lost this critical transportation service. For this reason, I am going to be calling on my fellow supervisors from the affected districts to work with me to reinstate these services. According to information provided by the research department for projected midpoint cost to restore the modified routes beginning in June of 2026 is as follows. Route 11 is which is districts 5 and 18, will be a cost of $215,970. Route 22, which is districts 3 and 13, would be a cost of $142,870. Route 24, which is my district, District 11, would be a cost of $180,690. Route 80, which is districts 1 and 2, the cost would be $301,930, and Route 88, District 18, would be a cost of $216,910. The total estimated restoration cost for these routes is $1,058,370. I am currently preparing a resolution that will not make the March cycle, but is my intention to bring it forward during the May cycle. The initial resolution draft authorizes an appropriation transfer of $180,690 from Agency 194-1945 appropriation for contingencies to Agency 560 DOT Transit Paratransit System to restore MCTS Route 24 service to Greendale to the fall 2025 service levels. However, I strongly believe that restoring transit access is not just a District 11 issue. These service reductions affect multiple districts and thousands of residents across Milwaukee County. I encourage supervisors from the affected districts to join me as co-sponsors and work collaboratively to ensure that our residents continue to have access to reliable public transportation. I also have a question for the MCTS directors. Given that county residents are continuing to pay for transit services through our shared funding mechanisms, what options does MCTS see for restoring these routes or preventing further service reductions so that our residents can maintain reliable access to work, healthcare, school, and other essential services? Our constituents depend on these routes to maintain their livelihoods and their health. We should be working together to ensure that the services they pay for remain available to them. I do look forward to working with you on this effort. I want to also just point out again that this is the only service that comes to downtown Greendale, which is our business district, and it is now being cut. And while I understand that there has to be some adjustment with services, cutting services completely out of a community and yet asking for their funding is not acceptable in my opinion. So I will turn it back to you, but that is my question, and I appreciate you listening today.
Thank you, Chair and Supervisors. I can just say, thank you for your comments, Supervisor. I know that dealing with the deficit and the funding issues has been difficult. We've been working to put forward what we have identified as being how can we least impact the overall ridership. And it's unfortunate that there are some communities that it doesn't have the same productivity levels as other parts of our community, because there's needs everywhere, and I don't want to be dismissive of that. But to answer the other part of your question, I want to tell you that, and this was part of my update, that we are working on looking at new ways of ensuring we have appropriate level of service for the amount of funds that are available. And this network redesign that we are embarking upon, hopefully very soon, we will be issuing an award for outside consultant to help us, and it's going to involve Greendale, all communities across the county, to reimagine how we can provide the service that you speak eloquently about. We need to do that. So, it's unfortunate. I'm sorry that it ended up resulting in affecting your district so prominently, but we are continuing the work, and we're not opposed to continuing to have these conversations to see what the board wants to do with the resolution in May. I mean, we will be partners with you.
All right, Supervisor Ekblad?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Really appreciate the report. Just have a couple of questions about sort of the state of transportation at MCTS in the context of other transportation firms across Wisconsin, and also curious about the conversation there. So, the budgetary hurdles in front of MCTS are well known, well documented. We've been in this conversation for several years now. I'd be curious how MCTS's struggles kind of stack up compared to other transportation systems in Green Bay, in Beloit, in Kenosha, and Waukesha, because we're obviously not the only one facing a lack of dedicated funding. And I'd be really curious in making the case for public transportation, what conversations have been had with those partners across the state of Wisconsin who are also clearly invested. I mean, Dane County as well, obviously. So, curious how we stack up, and then also curious how we're building that coalition statewide, so it's not just, Milwaukee against the world.
So definitely that's something we're working on with other partners around the state. And I would say the number one pinpoint challenge in this MCTS budget is that state aids are our number one funding source that supports the transit system, but they've been basically flat since 2010. So if we were to adjust them with inflation going back to them, we'd have about $34 million more in our budget than we actually do today. So I think that's our biggest problem and challenge, is that we don't have a dedicated funding source for transit that grows with inflation. Right now, when we're projecting $17 to $20 million gap for next year, it's because we're running out of the COVID funds. They're not available anymore. And then none of our other revenues are projected to increase. Obviously, our costs of bus operators increase, our costs of maintenance on our facilities and our vehicles increase, and we don't have any revenue that grows with inflation to cover those costs. So that's why we have a gap every year and next year and going forward unless there's a change. That situation, it's starting to be very severe numbers here in Milwaukee County, the size of the gaps that we're talking about, but it's not unique to Milwaukee County alone. The state aids that are provided to all the different tiers of transit agencies have been flat, and there's other governments and transit agencies in the state that are also pursuing funding. In fact, there was fairly recently a bill proposed to increase funding for the lower population transit communities. It didn't apply to all communities, that particular bill, but there is a goal for all agencies to see a boost in funding. So MCTS, as well as Government Affairs, has been in discussions with the Wisconsin Public Transit Association, WIPTA, and having conversations with other communities. I think, for any advocacy effort to be successful, we need to partner with people across the state to show that this is not just a Milwaukee County issue. It is an issue for other agencies across the state as well. And this issue, in fact, was WIPTA's #1 lobbying priority in the previous state budget. And there was a modest increase provided, but it wasn't to the level that they're seeking. So I anticipate that that will be the case again in the upcoming budget session for the state. But we're intending to make a much stronger push along with our partners at WIPTA to try to address this issue at the state level.
Okay, Supervisor Belinsky.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I apologize. All my computers in my house decided to do mandatory updates this morning, and so I don't have access to all the information I would like to have at my fingertips at this moment. But I have a couple of questions. So on February 3rd, I had reached out to Director Fuentes for the latest first period ridership numbers for the routes, and have not received that yet. So I just would like to have that information on a regular basis, just so we know kind of where ridership is fluctuating as we make these critical decisions about our system. I guess with the severity of the funding shortfall from the state, and that being the #1 funding source, and the fact that it didn't go up in the last budget, there's a $2.5 billion surplus. And I've seen public schools sue the state for adequate funding. I've seen them at the Capitol, demanding some of that surplus be spent on education. I haven't seen transit officials at the Capitol demanding that we use some of the surplus for, for public transit. I guess I just would like to see, there's no bigger friend of public transit, I don't think, than me probably. But I want to see, us fighting for ourselves a little bit here, because there is no way on earth we should be dealing with an $18 million deficit when there's a $2.5 billion surplus at the state that seems like it's going to get unspent at this point. I'm, very interested to see what this I don't know what they called it, a right sizing, this proposal about rethinking the transit model that we can afford, when what the results of that are. But to me that just sounds like cuts. And I guess what we don't have at our fingertips is the ability to know exactly what was our peak in terms of bus miles and route hours and things like that, for MCTS all time. And then how far away are we from that now? And then, in the last 2 service reductions, what is that total percent cut that we've already endured? Because I just don't think we can endure too many of those. And I just feel like we don't, maybe as supervisors, have all the information at our fingertips that we could use to be like, all right, what is our baseline? What is the minimum acceptable standard that we can even accept before we look at other areas of the county that maybe we have to say we can't afford, like giant building projects?
Did you want to respond?
I'll just comment. We're working with Government Affairs, County Executive on any funding opportunities that are available. I know Government Affairs also will be providing updates at their meeting, I believe, on March 16th. But we're looking for funding. We're also preparing for the next state budget process in the meantime. And in terms of the bus data, we can look to gather that types of information.
Yes, and regarding the ridership, I don't know, Jesus Ochoa wants to come up, our Director of Service Development, to provide a little bit of an update on the ridership that you were asking about, and we'll make sure, Supervisor Belinsky, that we will get you the reports that you requested, and we'll make sure they come at the regular basis.
Thank you.
Supervisor Vincent, did you have a follow-up?
Yes,
Oh, I'm sorry.
I think somebody, go ahead.
Yes, sir.
Hi, Jesus Ochoa, Mr. Chair, County Supervisors, Jesus Ochoa, Director of Service Development at MCTS. So to address a little bit of that for you, Supervisor Belinsky, we're just under 2 months worth of collecting our ridership data with the routes that went into effect on the 11th. So we do have some preliminary numbers. Now we typically like to kind of wait in that 2.5 to 3 month to get a really good average of what's happening on a particular route. As you may imagine, the preliminary numbers are looking as a decrease, right? As there's less trips out there on some of these routes with less frequency, there's less hours of service out there, there's going to be less ridership. So as of now, we do have some preliminary numbers that we could share with you, Supervisor, but just know that what we'll provide, we'll continue to provide that quarterly, so you can see not only just the trends from month to month, but also the trends from season to season. So there's a little bit of that, as well as we tend to lose ridership, not to lose ridership, but there tends to be less ridership in the winter compared to the fall, things of that nature.
Sure. And then does that include then riders per bus?
Oh, per
Because
bus hour?
like that-
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
Oh, this bus is usually empty, or this bus is always full all the time. And I don't know if I've seen that in previous reports, and maybe I just haven't looked for it, but.
Yeah, no, we have the same, level of reports that we normally do, right? Which we can look at it by trip, by bus stop, by total day. However we want to splice that up, we have those numbers, and we can do that for you.
Okay, great. Thanks. Thanks for the explanation.
Mr. Vice Chair?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Okay, so the 1.25 billion that was awarded, you guys split that with the Kosciuszko Park improvements, right?
Correct. The earmark was designated to both buses, and there was an earmark for Kosciuszko Park.
Can you speak a little bit about how that split went? What is it? Because that's not a lot of money at all. 1.25 million, and especially to be split with Kazi, how would it have been split?
Yeah, we may have to follow up with the exact numbers, but basically the earmark process is that we request specific items, and the federal government could provide an award at the full amount requested or a partial amount requested. So the way I see it is any federal funds that we receive in the earmark process helps offset the costs that we otherwise have to pay. And that's basically, we received enough funding to purchase a bus, and the county received funding for Kosciuszko Community Center. It's not in full paying for those repairs, but I think it's a positive thing that we received them. The earmarks it's a difficult process, very challenging to receive earmarks.
Sure. I also wanted to ask a little bit, because I've had a lot of constituents really trying to get me to talk about what kind of initiatives, I guess, are being taken for our senior riders and senior passengers, senior citizen passengers. If everything's going to remain the same there, if there's some kind of improvement for them to be able to improvement in service for them, because the 55 specifically is one of the routes that a lot of the seniors in my district would ride. So, yeah, that's.
Thank you, Chairman, Supervisors. We will be taking in all the input as we normally do. In terms of what's happening with the Rev 55, I don't have anything to speak of in terms of any cuts, but part of the network redesign is going to consider all aspects of the transit service that we provide, and trying to ensure that we have service available to all parts of the community. I know that Department on Aging also has a senior ride program, but as far as transit goes, yes, that's something that's high on our list, to making sure that we make service available, in particular to some of our most vulnerable populations.
All right, and then the last thing I want to ask, it's what Supervisor Belinsky had already asked. is there anything stopping Milwaukee County from suing for the surplus to get dedicated state funding?
I am not aware of what the case will be on that. We'll have follow-up conversations, but the school fund has a more specific avenue for dollars, and but I don't know what our lawsuit would be there, but that's something we can talk with OCC more about and follow up on.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
If I can follow up on just one other item, or actually two. The earmark was $1 million for buses and $250,000 for Kosciuszko Community Center. And then I just wanted to make one comment on the ridership levels. As indicated, we were seeing a reduction, but it's not something that wasn't expected because of the fact that there were frequency reductions in the budget, as well as some route segment adjustments that were made. And at least it's very early in the year, but from what I'd seen from the first month of the year, the ridership revenue that came in was positive compared to what we were expecting in the budget for at least the first month of the year. So it's not a reduction that goes above and beyond necessarily was anticipated, it appears, but again, it's very early in the year.
Supervisor Vincent, did you have any more questions?
Yes, I just had a follow-up. And first, I want to thank Supervisor Belinsky for bringing up the surplus. As someone who serves on the school board, I do know that there's a direct funding issue with schools, and I do think that is an avenue to be looking at. There is money available at the state. They're just sitting on it. But I want to thank you for your initial response. As a follow-up, I would just ask that you please reach out directly to the Village of Greendale regarding the resolution that they drafted and sent you concerning the restoration of bus service. The village actually took formal action because of the significant impact these service reductions are having on the residents, and I believe it is important that their concerns receive a direct response. Given that many Greendale residents rely on this service to get to those medical appointments, school, and other essential destinations, I think coordination between MCTS and the village is critical as we work toward a path to restore service. Could you please confirm with me whether MCTS has responded to the village's resolution and whether there has been any direct communication with Greendale officials regarding their request? I would appreciate an update on any outreach or discussions that have occurred and any next steps that MCTS is considering. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman and Supervisors. I cannot confirm whether or not we've had any direct outreach, but I have certainly made note of the request. So thank you.
All right. Seeing no more hands from supervisors, I believe Tom Stawicki is with us. Mr. Stawicki, are you there?
Yes, I'm here, sir. Good morning, Mr. Chair and committee members. Tom Stawicki, Legislative Director, Lobbyist for A2998. Just a couple of quick observations regarding Supervisor Vincent's testimony. When I saw her, she had a Facebook post yesterday, and it brought up a conversation I had with some supervisors a while back on when these when these route changes take effect, does MCTS reach out during the planning stages to the jurisdictions or to the communities where these changes are going to take effect? Or do they reach out to the county supervisors whose district it will affect before the planning stage goes into the implementation stage? Because that sounds like a big disservice to not only the county supervisors, but to their constituents. So I'm hoping that in the future, MCTS will reach out to the supervisors, especially before they go into effect during the planning stages. And I also want to comment on dedicated funding. That is really a tough nut to crack because currently we're planning ATU, our statewide ATU Legislative Conference Board, along with the Teamsters who represent public transportation entities. We're planning our yearly summit to Madison, and this is on our agenda in April when we go. currently, just some numbers, 15 years ago, the state allotted just over $118 million towards urban mass transit operating assistance, and jumping ahead to 2026, it's just a little bit over $115 million. So in 15 years, we went back $3 million, and, you know, if you take into effect how much the cost of living, the adjustments are, we're way underwater where we should be. I'm not saying had 2% or 2.5% yearly, would that have taken away the deficit that MCTS is approaching, but it certainly would have really trimmed that down a lot. So that's something that's going to be on our agenda to talk about, but just letting you know, it is really going to be a uphill battle to get money, and if there is any money, perhaps in the surplus package that the governor might give, that'll only be a one-time thing. So just letting you know that we are working with MCTS and WIPTA, as a matter of fact, and trying to get our priorities down and present that to our legislators in Madison coming up. So thank you for your time.
Did you want to
Yes.
follow up?
Can I please just respond to part of what Mr. Stowicki had to say? We do have, I think, a rather robust outreach effort that with our communities, especially any of the areas of the communities that are impacted by potential proposed service changes. Could we add more? Perhaps we could. That's something that we're open to and continually wanting to ensure that we are communicating effectively what any service changes will be in the foreseeable future. So we do that outreach. The changes that were talked about today, they were well known for several months, and you know that is not. It's not something that was just dropped on us, but we are committed to ensuring that whatever additional communication, whatever we can do better to make sure that people are informed and understand alternatives, that's in part why we're here. So just wanted to add that. Thanks.
If I may add, I'll just say, I believe MCTS was very transparent about the route impacts and their budget deficit they were facing. It was stated in the budget what routes would be impacted. It's posted on, you know, all their service schedules. There were discussions about it in the budget process, which routes would be impacted. It went down to the route level detail. Information was shared with supervisors. The board voted on it. All that information was shared throughout the process. I think the issue we're seeing now is everything that was shared, everything that was reviewed, voted on, is now being implemented. So it's, you know, it's being seen, it's people are being affected now. So, but it's not by any means new information.
Okay. Thank you. I just wanted to say the reason, or one of the reasons I should say, that I moved this item forward. When the change in leadership of MCTS took place, I said, tell us what we need to hear and not what we want to hear. Well, you certainly told us what we don't want to hear. And we thank you for that. An estimated deficit of 17 to 20 million for next year. That is just, it takes one's breath away. And yesterday I heard on the radio economic impacts of our current war. They said the first thing that will go up will be the price of diesel. And since that's what our buses, overwhelming majority of our buses run on, that's a frightening prospect right there. So we've got a tough road ahead, if you'll pardon the expression. But we thank you for your testimony and for bringing us the news that we needed to hear. Thank you. Shall we go to item 1?
Item 1, from the Director, Department of Transportation, and the President and CEO, Milwaukee County Transit System, requesting authorization to apply for and accept, if awarded, better utilizing investments to leverage development, build, grant funds for transit infrastructure enhancements at MCTS facilities. This file is also referred to the Committee on Finance and is before your committee today for action.
Good morning, Sandy Kellner. I'm the Chief Administrative Officer for MCTS. And so the report before you right now is an action item that we are requesting the authorization to apply for and accept, if awarded, the build grant funds. And the build grant is intended for infrastructure, and we have much needed infrastructure improvements at MCTS facilities. So what is BUILD? It's an acronym. It's an acronym for Better Utilizing Investments to Leverage Development. And it's previously known as the RAISE Grant Program, which is another acronym for Rebuilding American Infrastructure with Sustainability and Equity. And that was established under the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act of 2009. So the BUILD grant is unique. It's highly competitive. It is intended to secure 100% federal funding for capital projects. So although we'd like to apply and receive 100% federal funding, it could be possible that 80% funding could be awarded. So we at MCTS are confident that our proposed projects align with the requirements of the BUILD grant. In particular, the grant specifically targets areas of persistent poverty and historically disadvantaged communities. And our two garages are certainly well within those areas, and even our admin building and our heavy-duty fleet maintenance building are surrounded by the historically disadvantaged communities. So what we did, we went through and identified what possible projects would fit under the merit criteria for this grant. And they include the planning and construction of upgrading our aging underground storage tanks, both fuel and oil storage tanks underground, replacement of some of our out-of-service bus lifts at all three locations. There's at least a couple at each of those three locations that need, they're the original lifts and they need to be replaced. Then we also identified LED lighting upgrades in all of our multiple facilities, all of our garages for better work output. So collectively, these projects aim to modernize the critical infrastructure that we need to improve our efficiency, as well as strengthening our long-term system reliability. So the awards are anticipated to be announced in the second quarter of 2026, and if approved, we would be able to begin implementing these projects in 2027. So now if we end up getting awarded 80%, so if we don't get the full funding, we would be back submitting a request for 20% funding in the 2027 capital budget process. So we'll have to wait and see what happens with that, but it sounds like somewhere in June we would find out if we would be awarded either 100% or 80% of these funds.
Mr. Vice Chair, did you have a question?
I make a motion to adopt.
I see Kevin. Do any supervisors have a question? Seeing none, I believe Kevin Myers is with us. Kevin, are you there?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I didn't have a comment about this or any comments about this. I was looking for number 2, but I couldn't. I had my hand raised there, but nobody called on me, so.
I apologize.
That's okay. If you want, I can just send an email.
Do you have any question for this?
Not for item 2, no.
Okay.
Item 1.
Okay.
So, thanks.
Okay. You say 80%, 20%. In the report here, I didn't see any dollar amount. What are we looking at here?
We are looking at applying for approximately $17.5 million for all of those projects combined. It remains to be seen if we will get scored in a range that we would be eligible for 100% of those funds, or 80%. Hopefully the 100% is what we're going for.
Okay. Well, that sounds theoretically very, very good. Because as we well know, we can use funding. I'm not seeing any further comments. Mr. Clerk, shall we take the vote?
On the motion by Supervisor Martinez that item number 1 be recommended for adoption, Supervisor Martinez,
Aye.
Bielinski,
Aye.
Ekblad,
Aye.
Mr. Chairman.
Aye.
4 ayes, 0 noes, the motion prevails.
Would you please read item 3?
Item 3, from the Director, Department of Transportation, requesting authorization to process an administrative appropriation transfer in the amount of $404,886 from the 2025 unallocated contingency to the Milwaukee County Transit System to pay off the remaining depreciation on 2 damaged buses that were declared a total loss in 2025. This file is referred to your committee today for informational purposes only, per section 59.60, sub 8, Wisconsin State Statutes, and is referred to the Committee on Finance for action.
Good morning again. Joe Lamers, Director, Department of Transportation.
Mike Bickerstaff, Senior Financial Manager at DOT. What you have before you is a requesting authorization to process an administrative transfer from the 2025 unallocated contingency to Milwaukee County Transit System in the amount of $404,886. We, in 22 and 23, we had, 2 buses that were purchased in 22 and 23 were damaged and declared a total loss. Normally, we have these buses depreciated over 12 years. Because these were declared losses in the early part of their life, we now have to pay the remainder of the depreciation. This was an unplanned expense, and we are requesting money from the contingency.
Anything else? No?
No.
Okay. Supervisors, any comments? Okay. Well, since...
Mr. Chair?
Yes?
Yeah, forgive my ignorance on accounting rules, but usually when I think of depreciation, I don't think of an actual amount of cash paid. It's usually like sort of a thing that someone claims on their taxes, like when a building depreciates, that they're not actually paying. So like, can you explain just the mechanics of it to me so I can have a better idea?
So we do actually receive a tax levy charge of depreciation in our operating budget for our vehicles. It's planned over a 12-year period, and it's a normal charge. There's a large depreciation line item in the transit budget, and it was expected, all of the buses we paid on this 12-year schedule. When we got this, all the final insurance work was done, all the final revenue collections and all the charges were taken care of. We got notification from the comptroller's office just last month that this has to be settled and fully reconciled, and that we have to pay the remaining balance off of the depreciation. If that's $404,000. It's a somewhat unique situation in transit that one individual department would be so affected by this. It's because transit operates with their own fund. If this was done, if this were to happen in the general fund, say to a parks vehicle, I believe, they wouldn't be seeing such an impact from it because there's a whole general fund to help absorb the cost, but there's no backstop in transit. And this was highly unique for 2 buses that were so brand new, and one of them was an electric bus. So that's why we're seeing a large cost here impact. That amount only represents roughly 20% share. It's not exactly that percentage, but it's only the local share. And with all the work that had been done this year, in transit to get back below the deficit, and this being a year-end charge, that was why, you know, the county exec's office support us in saying, you know, we'll go for contingency for this item because it wasn't budgeted. And that way, the other alternatives, we'd have to, again, possibly, depending on year-end, say transit went back into a deficit, or we'd have to draw more federal funds, which would actually only just harm transit in 2026. So that's sort of what's happening here. If there's, I don't know if I fully answered your question about, you know, how and why this is done, but what I can do is ask the comptroller's office to be available for the finance committee meeting next week to speak to any more details about it, but we do.
So is this essentially how it's financed?
Yep.
Like we didn't, so then there's no insurance that kicks in to pay for the loss?
So the insurance, sorry, Mike, I'll finish this and go ahead, but the insurance did help us, but it's being utilized for the purchase of new vehicles. There's also federal laws pertaining to that, so we can't pocket the insurance to cover our costs and keep the federal funds at the same time. So that's what's happening. The insurance proceeds are going towards a new vehicle, whereas this cost is going towards paying down the depreciation on the local share cost of the existing one. But this is a complicated matter, I'll say. We've met with the comptrollers on this many times to get to this final number. And it is a complex issue. I think Mike had some additional information to share.
Essentially, I was going to say the same thing, but the only thing I'll add is this is part of MCTS is called what it's called an enterprise fund. So it's separate from the general fund. So because it's kind of on its own, that we have to have all the accounting within that fund.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Well, since this is an informational item only, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can you please read the next item?
Item 4, from the Director, Department of Transportation, providing an informational report regarding the Complete Communities Transportation Planning Project Update and Municipal Safety Action Plans. This item is informational only unless otherwise directed by the committee.
Good day. Please introduce yourself.
Yes, absolutely. I'm Jeff Sponcia, Milwaukee County in the Department of Transportation, the Director's Office. I'm the Transportation Program Planning Manager. And I'm here to give just a brief update on the conclusion and the completion of our Complete Communities Transportation Planning Project and our Municipal Safety Action Plans. So let me share my screen as I have a few slides. All right. Hopefully everyone can see that. Chairman, supervisors, and everyone else who's listening. Everyone, I think, on this committee has been informed and updated for almost 3 years now on this project. It's all about safe streets. You know, the origin is, you know, what can we at the county really do about reckless driving and about fatal crashes that have been happening. Well, we earned 3 different grants that have funded the 3 phases of this project. And just a brief overview, phase 1 was our Safe Streets Roadshow, where we obtained an array of public feedback across 22 public meetings in the summer of 2023. 4 of those were in the city. of Milwaukee. All other ones were across all of our other municipalities, one of those in Spanish. And our project team, we took that feedback that our residents really told us about what concerns them about the safety of our streets. And we cross-referenced that with crash data over the last 5 years. And those findings were in our transportation safety assessment report. All of you received a copy, and that's been available on our website since February 2024. Phase 2 then, we worked with our partners at Medical College of Wisconsin and also UWM on our county's motor vehicle collision dashboard. We helped to fund that project. That's been instrumental, not only for us, but a lot of our partners and stakeholders all across the county to really find out what's happening on their streets, where they live, and where they travel. Also, our Safer Streets workshops in the fall of 2024 enabled us to find out what our residents had to say about proposed countermeasures on our corridors of concern. If you recall, we identified 25 cross-county, multi-jurisdictional roadways that our residents and our crash data really told us, hey, these are the most hazardous roadways in our county. Also, that year, county executive and all of you on the county board resolved to commit to Vision Zero by 2037. Remember, that now is law, our county now. We must do whatever it takes to eliminate both fatal and serious injury crashes on all roadways all over our county by 2037. And so those findings and all of our proposed safety project opportunities, policy recommendations, and countermeasures are in the comprehensive safety action plan, which you received last January, about a year ago. So now, phase 3, I'm just so excited to report that it is complete. We are now at the end of the Complete Communities Transportation Planning Project. And so how did we get there in phase 3? Well, we worked on getting awarded some more funding through the SS4A program to fund demonstration activities in 5 of our municipalities. We also, in June last year, we applied for a 2025 SS4A implementation grant, which I'll mention in a couple minutes what happened there. And then finally, over the last year, we've been working with all 19 of our partners throughout all 19 municipalities on the completion of their own action plans, right? So we really zeroed it down to the local level, and worked with them. What are their concerns on their streets? And so Milwaukee County, we funded the development of these plans, right? They didn't have to pay anything. However, their staff and their leadership, they did contribute their recommendations, their time and expertise, and so, we're very grateful for them. And also to our consultants who we hired through the grants that we got. They did just a phenomenal job with all 19 of these. By the way, we did deliver printed copies of these action plans. Any municipalities in your districts, you now have a printed copy of their action plan. So it's in your mailbox if you haven't looked yet. I want to say that we do also have these available for download. I'll share that URL in a minute. Some really great news. 4 additional municipalities have resolved to commit to Vision Zero by 2037 as a part of this process, right? That was a really big component of this, is introducing what Vision Zero is, and getting their leadership to discuss whether committing was, at the right time for them. And so Wauwatosa, West Dallas, Greenfield, and Cudahy now, as of last week, for Cudahy, all of them now are, officially in alignment with us. 2 others resolved to support our goal of Vision Zero here at the county. That's Greendale and Oak Creek. So we thank them for that. And there's still more who are discussing this, on their village councils, on their city councils, and in their mayoral or village president offices, right? So these conversations that 2-3 years ago were never happening, now they're happening, right? This is how, over time, right, policy and funding and construction, it changes to integrate these principles, these safe streets countermeasures, which cost money, and take time, and really necessitate that public feedback. But I would argue it's worth it, right? If we could save lives on our streets. And so what's on our action plans? Very quickly, leadership, commitments, and goal setting. There's a statement from their mayor, from their village president, or the county executive himself. There's information on what Vision Zero is, and what the safe system approach is. All of these things now, we are integrating on a variety of levels within Milwaukee County DOT, and also our partners here. There's a local safety analysis, that crash data on local roadways that our comprehensive safety action plan did not cover. There's advice about how to effectively implement community engagement for transportation safety improvement projects. All right, there's some very good resources in here as well. And then those recommendations, right? What are the most important, the priority actions that these plans recommend to their leadership? Hey, if you want to reduce and eliminate both fatal and serious injury crashes, and also just make your streets even safer, these are the first things that you should do. So, there's some projects that are specific to locations, to intersections or roadway segments. There's also some demonstration activities, right? Some temporary improvements, just to see if those will work. Other Other recommendations like policy improvements, some laws, working with our state, and then how can we actually fund those improvements, right? There's a whole section on that, and then the appendix has a bunch of valuable resources that those cities and villages can utilize. And just a note for the city of Milwaukee, right? They already had their own Vision Zero action plan, and so we worked with them on where their high injury network and our corridors of concern overlap, and then on what county assets can we identify really should be improved on a variety of levels for safety. And so all of those MSAPs are available at the URL on your screen. And it sounds like there could be a media event at some point to officially introduce these to the public. So we'll keep you all informed of that. Hope you're ready for some more good news, because we have it. As you may have heard, in January, Milwaukee County was awarded almost $25 million in federal funding to help fund these street safety projects. We came before this body last year, to ask permission and authorization to apply for that grant through the Safe Streets and Roads for All program. We did that, and late December we were awarded this amount. It was certainly a surprise, but this proves what the need is for our county, right? They see the crash data. They hear about what our residents are saying, and so it's great to have this support from the federal government. So participating jurisdictions, Milwaukee County, obviously, Brown Deer, Glendale, Milwaukee, Shorewood, West Dallas. That is where this round of projects will take place. And we're also hoping to apply for the final year, 2026, of the Safe Streets and Roads for All funding. And we're encouraging all 19 of our partners to, collaborate. Once again, there's also a couple planning studies that'll be funded. My final slide here. How did all of this happen in a financial perspective? You see the dollar amounts, especially that 2025 SS4A grant, which is instrumental. But all of that to say that almost 33 million has been invested in safe streets across our county since 2022, with only an estimated $1.3 million in outlay from our county itself. So rest assured, we are leveraging every possible opportunity to improve the safety of our streets and to really help reduce and ultimately eliminate fatal crashes and serious injury crashes on our roadways. A couple more notes. Really one more note that kind of speaks to the discussion earlier about transit funding. When you reduce funding for transit, right, that means that service will come off the road, whether frequency or routes themselves. It is proven in both our data and across our country, when transit service is on the decline, crashes increase. I want to leave you all with that, and I'm open if you have any questions. Thank you.
Supervisor Belinsky?
Thank you. Not so much a question as just a comment that I think it's really helpful to look at things in the lens that Mr. Sponcia was just talking about how not only, economic development and transportation, but the safety impacts of a robust transit system, how, those have tangible and intangible costs and benefits as well. And we need to make sure we remember that as we're making decisions.
Okay. Anyone else? Well, since this is informational, we thank you.
Excellent. Thanks.
Mr. Clerk, the next item, please.
Item 5, 2026 Adopted Budget Amendment 2 from the Office of Corporation Counsel to provide an informational report describing the governance structure of Milwaukee Transport Services, Inc. This file is also considered by the Committee on Finance and is informational only unless otherwise directed by the committee.
Do we have someone here from Corporation Counsel?
Good morning, Chairperson, committee members, William Davidson, Deputy Corporation Counsel. Appreciate the opportunity to be here this morning. I apologize for being a little late to the meeting.
Please proceed.
Thank you. So the committee and its members would have received Corporation Counsel's report providing a brief overview of the history of the governance structure and the relationship between Milwaukee County and MTS, and then also, again, a brief overview of what that governance structure looks like today. I won't belabor the point by repeating everything that was included in that report or the exhibits, but happy to take questions and provide answers as best I can. In short, I will just say that the current structure provides to the Milwaukee County Board of Supervisors oversight for policy-making decisions for MTS and with it MCTS that it operates, with the day-to-day governance being left to the president of MTS and his leadership team and other staff.
Supervisor Belinsky?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So looking at the documents, the official structure, governance structure includes, let's say a member of the Board of Supervisors and a lot of MCTS folks, but it only meets once a year. I guess that's the minimum it has to meet. I don't know of any nonprofit board that only meets once a year that provides oversight. And I guess what would be the mechanism for making sure that board meets more than once a year? And is there a legal avenue for this committee or for the Board of Supervisors to sort of direct that to happen more often, or to direct what's voted on or what's decided, to be considered at those board meetings? It just seems like it's kind of a perfunctory thing that doesn't really have an actual function right now. It's essentially an board meeting every year.
Supervisor, I think that's a very good question, and I think you've observed one of I'll refer to it as issues that arose in 2014 as I think the county was kind of hurriedly trying to move towards setting up this new structure because of the funding issues that could have arisen had this new structure not been put in place by the end of the year. So for any nonprofit organization like MTS, there is a requirement for an organizational meeting every year. There really is no additional requirement so much for a nonprofit board like that to meet at any specific time or given time. It is currently the Articles of Incorporation for MTS that govern its meeting structure and cadence. Of course, this body receives a report regularly from MTS, MCTS on its day-to-day functions, year-to-date functions, that sort of thing. This body could certainly request or require more frequent updates or different types of updates. I think that there would be opportunity for there to be discussions with the MTS board about whether they would look to amend their articles of incorporation to have more regular meetings. But those sorts of organizational meetings really are intended to be policy making and oversight types of meetings, which the current structure has already vested in the Board of Supervisors and in this committee in large part specifically. So I think that the intention in 2014 when this was set up was that this body and the county board would kind of replace those regular cadence nonprofit type of meetings that you might be familiar with or aware of or be referring to because of this structure that we wanted to create an opportunity for the board to have that policy oversight. I don't know if that answers the question, but I hope it provides at least a little bit more background.
Yeah, I guess I would have thought that we already had that oversight because it seemed like people talk about the old days when supervisors had more power to do things. So you're saying that we've actually been vested in more of the delegated authority since 2014?
Yes, because MTS was stood up to be a quasi-governmental instrumentality of Milwaukee County post-2014. And so while it isn't part of Milwaukee County, it is very, very closely related to Milwaukee County. And through its independent articles of incorporation, it has given away many of its policy-making authorities to Milwaukee County and the Milwaukee County Board specifically. And so I do think that the board, this body, has significant policy oversight. Not as much the day-to-day, of course. I don't know that this board could direct a particular day-to-day or administrative course of action without the MTS board meeting and voting and accepting that sort of thing. But it doesn't mean that this body can't make recommendations, can't make suggestions, can't require reporting based on things that have been recommended. All the things that I think this body has traditionally done, at least in the last number of years. But to specifically answer your question, yes, I think that the board has significant policy oversight for MTS and MCTS as a result.
Interesting. Okay.
Supervisor Ekblad?
Was Supervisor Blinsky done? Yeah. Yep. Okay, great. To piggyback off Supervisor Blinsky's comment, just to put it bluntly, I mean, coming out of last year, Mr. Davidson, the day-to-day oversight was the issue. And the lack of meeting from the MCTS board, I think, was critical to that because we're, as much power as the board may or may not have, we're still not going to be there for the day-to-day oversight of MCTS operations. And frankly, this board was misled by reports from MCTS. So is there a way that we can statutorily require the board to meet more than once a year to provide regular reports so that the board is well informed and not simply relying on leadership, which I don't mean to disparage CEO Fuentes or Mr. Lamers. I think we got a really good team there now, but to future-proof what the board is using for oversight, because we can't provide oversight if the information on a day-to-day basis is incorrect, and that was the position the board was in last year. So can we statutorily require the board to have day-to-day oversight of MCTS and to meet more regularly?
So the day-to-day oversight question, somewhat, I'll say, because the MTS board ultimately has authority over who leads MTS as the CEO, correct? Right. And so the board is comprised in large part of Milwaukee County leadership and officials who are placed on the board to provide some level of oversight of MTS and MCTS. And so I think, and I would defer to Director Lamers, I think that there would be opportunity for that board to meet more often and to have a more regular cadence. But I will say that in conversations with Director Lamers, even since he's taken his current role, I think that there's a significant level of engagement that he and his team have already taken in MCTS and MTS, and it appears to me that they have a good working relationship with the CEO Fuentes. So I'll defer to Director Lamers if he has additional thoughts on that. To your specific question, Supervisor Ekblad, I don't believe that the board could direct specific day-to-day oversight. I think that the board could certainly request and suggest, and I would stop short of saying direct, but to help MTS move in a direction of a more regular board meeting cadence. And I don't know if that's something that Director Lamers and CEO Fuentes have begun to discuss, but I'll defer to him.
Okay. Mr. Lamers?
Thank you. Yeah, so just want to acknowledge, still relatively new in this role. I've looked at the MTS board and, what it's doing in relation to the county board and all that, and I don't have all the answers in terms of what the structure should be, but I want to just speak on a couple of things that, I acknowledge Supervisor Belinsky's comments that this is somewhat unusual that the board has been meeting, once a year. And that's unique amongst boards. But on the other hand, when you look at other boards, they don't have this other structure where they're reporting to the county board for policy-related items. So we're here to the Transportation Committee. I'll refer to this month's cycle. We have 5 transportation-related reports that are being reported here to the Transportation Committee. 4 of those 5 reports are also going to the Finance Committee. So what I'm struggling with a little bit is where do we provide all these reports at the county board level, and then also we're going to do it at the MTS board level. I am interested, if we're going to make changes, I am interested in avoiding duplication of efforts. So that's one thing that's kind of top of mind is that, MCTS already has a number of different boards and committees that they report to when it comes to, both transit and paratransit. So, and there's also financial reporting requirements that are shared to the county board. And I don't really think that there was an issue last year where the deficit report didn't reflect the full deficit. I don't know that means you change the whole structure of everything that gets reported out. But, to Bill Davidson's point, we have a situation now between McDOT and MCTS where we are meeting every week. We meet every month and go over financials. We have regular weekly meetings. We know where the numbers are at. We see if there's any issues. We know the reporting requirements to the county board, and I don't anticipate seeing those kind of issues again. We have the 2026 budget that we're currently operating in didn't include such aggressive estimates on revenues and expenditures. So it's just, I think that was the main issue I wanted to raise, is that we are already reporting to the county board on policy-related matters, and further, it also states in the bylaws that it emphasizes that can include reviewing of the budget. So that's sort of what I had to say, is that any changes to the MTS board, I would just want to try to avoid duplication of effort, and we already have oversight levels here. And the MTS board itself is also required given the fact that it's a non-stock, nonprofit entity.
Thank you. Supervisor Belinsky?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just one quick follow-up. Appreciate all the information. That was all very helpful. So we had a couple of leadership changes in MCTS and my time on the board. I think we've got 3 different directors total. At no point was the board or the MTS board seemingly involved in the recruitment of a successor. So, like the school board's big job is like approving the budget and choosing the superintendent. Why was either the board or this committee or MTS board not meeting to do this search on the new director? I'm not saying anything wrong with the current director. I'm just saying, where does that process seems different than most governing boards?
I don't know. I mean, we had members that are on the board that were part of the process for that. It wasn't the board itself that handled that, and that's something that could definitely be evaluated. I believe going forward about the participation on the panel.
Okay, appreciate it.
Mr. Stawicki, do you have a comment?
Yes, I do, Mr. Chair. Good morning again, Mr. Chair and committee members. Tom Stawicki, 82998. This is for Mr. Davidson. I believe that Board of Directors was created, and correct me if I'm wrong, 2014, that was in response to, I believe that was County Executive Abley's attempt to privatize MCTS with kind of a sham RFP from MV Transportation. He tried to push that through with basically no oversight from the county board. And in response to that, the Board of Directors was created to guard against that, future RFP process with MCTS having to go back every, I believe it was 5 years, to, put a proposal in and possibly get it taken away from Milwaukee Transport Services to a private company that is for profit. I believe that's correct. But I guess there all the talk about, the MCTS reports to the county supervisors at the meetings monthly, primarily the finance committee and the transit committee. But it's reporting too. I mean, by the time MCTS and MTS are done with their reports, there's really, at least what I've noticed, is very, very little wiggle room for input from the county board. Sure, they can take a look at it, but by the time it reaches those meetings, usually it's, without a better term, a done deal. So I guess my question is, what powers exactly do county supervisors have in making these decisions for, like Kathleen, Supervisor Vincent stated earlier, like in these routes, decisions on route adjustments. I mean, I've been here for a while, and there really is no clear guidance on what powers the supervisors have.
Mr. Lammers?
I guess just a comment on that particular item. The supervisors voted on the route adjustments, the changes that are in the budget. I would say that the administration is being transparent in doing that, and that's the expectation. That the route changes that are in the budget are shared. Those route changes were shared with the supervisors in their districts, what the impacts were. There was a, hearing process to go over the budget. The board ended up restoring some of the reductions to transit via approximately $5 million allocation. And then MCTS was required to report back and share what adjustments are you going to make, and then what are the residual impacts to all the routes. All that information was very clearly shared with every board member, and it was voted on and approved. So I think that, that information is out there. It's not new information by any means, and that information gets shared with the board. And I've been through several budget processes where there were changes to transit routes, and the impacts have always been shared with the supervisors, and they have the opportunity to provide input, and then there've been numerous times where, routes were proposed to have changes in the recommended budget, and then the supervisors see what all those impacts are. They make changes through budget amendments. That's always been part of the process, and that was included in this year's process as well. So the board has a very significant impact on, what changes end up ultimately being put forward and then end up happening. And part of that is just through transparency in our budget process and with the department and between the board. I think if MCTS put forward a final budget proposal that just says we're reducing service by $1 million and doesn't tell the board what the impacts are going to be, the board we would hear from the board about that. I know that. So we proactively let the Board of Supervisors know what those impacts are during the process. And that's where there's a significant role on, what the policies are and what changes and system impacts and all of that.
Thank you. Mr. Stewart, do you have a follow-up?
Yes, I do, Mr. Chairman. Just, I'm not denying that, MCTS isn't transparent in reporting to the supervisors at the meetings. Their reports are very thorough, but I guess my statement was it's pretty much of a done deal by the time it does get to the individual committee meetings. I believe there's a little bit of wiggle room, but having been through the process for the 2026 county budget, those changes did take the county supervisors by surprise. And it was through some finagling and some homework on the part of ATU that we came up with the idea to keep those routes that were initially slated to be totally eliminated, to put them back part-time. And thankfully, the county board, including all you people on the transit committee, all you supervisors, voted for that almost $5 million additional funding to keep some degree of service on all the routes. But I guess in summary is I think there could be some better communication before the reports are finalized with the county supervisors. I know there's outreach. I see the meeting agendas online, but I suppose before the reports are finalized, they could do one final call to the supervisors, especially whose districts they represent, to let them know, hey, this is what we got. Are you good with it? Before it gets to the meeting stage. And I know you got very little to work with as far as the routes are, and we appreciate MCTS, planning to keep everything, at least something on every route. But like I said, there could be, I believe, a little bit more communication with MCTS to the supervisors before the reports are finalized.
Any follow-up, Mr. Lammers?
Sure. I will just comment that that was done. The supervisors received reports on what the route impacts were before they were even published, and before the budget was finished, and before they made it to committee.
Okay. Supervisor Ekblad.
There. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I just want to thank Mr. Davidson and Director Lamers for this presentation. Appreciate the way you're handling the questions. I want to thank Mr. Stawicki for his comments and ask to be excused for the remainder of the meeting.
You're excused. Mr. Davidson.
Thank you, Chairperson. Just briefly, I want to first emphasize and echo Director Lamers' earlier comments that really the power and authority of the board is really found in its appropriating authority, right? That's something I know I've discussed with at least some of the members of the board in the past on several occasions, but it really truly is through the budget process that the board can assert its significant policy authority, whether for MTS and MCTS or other parts of county business. And with that, too, excuse me, I will say that it shouldn't be lost on anyone on the committee or the board or in this meeting that the work of the county board really does occur in committees. The board really can only act as a body, and so it isn't until the committee meetings that the work of the board can really be undertaken. So I appreciate, again, Director Wiener's comments and recalling of the significant information and reporting that was shared with the members of the Board of Supervisors, but it really isn't until the committees meet that work can be undertaken and those sorts of interactions can occur to ultimately create whatever the final policy decision might be.
Okay. Well, since this is an informational item, Mr. Clerk, do you want to proceed to the next item?
Item 6, e-comments submitted to the Committee on Transportation and Transit via the County Legislative Information Center click.
There are no e-comments, but they will be appended to the file if any come in.
Okay, thank you. I want to thank everyone for being here today. And with that, I believe we're done.